Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about the season finale of The Last of Us Part 2. Now we gotta wait 2 years for the next season. God dang it, come on man. I really hate the modern era of streaming where seasons take 2 years to make. As a season finale, I could see some think that this was an anticlimactic and weird place to end, and in a way it is, but I thought it was a great episode overall. Before I continue, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up, it's a great help. I also have a very active Letterboxd account, so go check that out. For me, my only real issue with this episode is that we don't get to see the next chapter of the story anytime soon. With a game, the Abby confrontation cliffhanger happens, but you get to keep going at your own pace because the entire story is already at your fingertips. Here with a TV show, I can see a lot of people ending up upset because it just kinda ends on a high moment of tension and leaves you hanging. That aside, this was a pretty darn great episode of TV. It has a constant movement to it while also allowing the character moments to breathe. And for me, this episode handled the relentless pacing of the Seattle section of the season the best out of the 3 episodes. It also helps that Ellie's third day in the game is also easily the shortest act of the game. It's like an hour and a half to 2 hours maximum. There isn't a ton of story there, so they got to let the big moments of this episode stand out better than I feel like they did with day 1 or day 2. The scene where Ellie comes back to the theater at the start was well handled, quite different at the same time, but very well done. Dina still tends to Ellie's bruises, and Ellie admits what she did to Nora, but she also tells Dina what Joel did at the hospital, which I think is an interesting addition, because that did not happen at all in the game. As far as we know, Game Dina only knows that Abby came to Jackson to torture Joel, and that's it. And I think this changes Dina's perspective on why they are in Seattle to seek vengeance in the first place. It very heavily contrasts her talk with Ellie from episode 5, about not caring about whatever motivations of a person who killed her family was, because, well, she clearly does care about that now. She's very clearly disgusted that she's even in this situation, but she hasn't voiced that to Ellie. And knowing what Joel did to Abby's father definitely would change someone's perspective. Well, at least the perspective of someone who isn't Ellie. Once Ellie and Jesse leave the theater to go find Tommy, this is when we really start to see Ellie's spiral into obsession come to the surface. After her incident with Nora, her mask of pain has basically fully dropped. She's no longer playing this nice act or joyful nature. She's hurt, angry, and she's lashing out at people. She acts out at Jesse. She rants at him about how she needs to keep going after Abby, even when it logically doesn't make sense to do so. Speaking of Jesse, I really liked what they did with him in this episode. He's mostly level-headed and trying to keep the people he cares about safe while also trying to keep them from making even more stupid decisions than they already have. And it was sad to see him get killed so swiftly here, and it was sad to see him die in the game in the same way. Young Mazzino did a great job portraying this character and fleshing out some of the things that were not part of the game. The main highlight of this finale for me was definitely Ellie going out on her own after Jesse leaves to go find Tommy. To me, this section of the episode proved that they definitely could have had Ellie go out on her own earlier on and make it just as compelling as when there's dialogue going on screen, because I thought all the stuff they showed with Ellie spiraling and continuously going into this obsession was really well handled and tense. It's not as harrowing or as intense as the endless violence that is Ellie's part in Seattle from the game, but it's still tragic nonetheless. An interesting moment that also wasn't in the game was Ellie landing on the Seraphite Island and nearly being lynched by them. And to be honest, at first I thought this was kind of a pointless addition, but really it's just a intense, harsh moment to showcase how obsessed she really has become when she immediately goes back to the aquarium after this big moment. Any normal human would try and find safety, but no, she goes right back into danger to try and find Abby. And the big moment of this finale, other than the cliffhanger, was the Owen and Mel scene. It is similar but also different to how the game executes it. Ellie tries to pull the Joel technique of two people matching up information but fails miserably and ends up killing both of them. The tragedy of Ellie killing Mel, who happens to be pregnant like Dina, is dialed up to 11 in the show. With Mel just thinking about the baby and not that Ellie showed up for her vengeance, it's a harsh reminder to the inhumane path that Ellie has started to follow. Ramsey's performance in this scene was absolutely top tier. My only point of confusion is that it does not seem like Ellie or Tommy or Jesse left a map behind like in the game for Abby to follow, so I am unsure of how Abby found the theater. But that leads up to the big cliffhanger moment. I pretty much knew that this would be the end of the season once they started following a similar structure to the game and not following Abby's perspective yet, but Abby finally shows up and she kills Jesse in the blink of an eye. And this scene is basically shot for shot, nearly line for line from the game, and then it cuts to black as Abby points the gun at Ellie. However, there is a scene after this moment that I was not expecting them to do, but I am glad that they did, where they tease that the show will be going back to Abby's story with Seattle Day 1 again. I like that they add this final scene to the episode. I pretty much knew that they would end the season on the theater cliffhanger, but I always felt like it would be a weird spot to end a season of television because it's this big rising piece of tension and then boom, it ends and now you have to wait for 2 years. While this is basically still the case, it does tease what will happen in season 3 with Abby's story going to be the centerpiece of this next chunk of the part 2 adaptation. As an episode alone, not necessarily as a finale, I don't really have anything negative to say other than the fact that we have to wait 2 years for the next season. While I really loved episodes 3, 4, and 5, they all went at a strange pace and made some of the impactful moments of the game go by a little too quickly, and it never really let Ellie's anger fester fully until just now. I think this episode had a great pace to it while being fast. It's not a super long episode, but it gets the right elements of this part of the story. And aside from episode 2 of this season, this is the episode that nails the tone of The Last of Us Part 2 the best, where it is dirty, it's mean, and it feels very harrowing to watch. And I didn't necessarily get that aspect of the tone from the other episodes. And then as far as the season itself goes, I have some interesting thoughts. As I've stated multiple times, The Last of Us Part 2 is far and away my favorite video game of all time, and it is very possibly my favorite fictional story ever told. I adore it with all of my heart, so one might think that I'd be extra critical of the choices and changes done within Season 2, and while I have some mixed opinions on certain things, I don't really have anything overtly negative to say. I think the weakest aspect of the season was the pacing. The Seattle portion of Ellie's story was only done in 3 episodes, while in the game it is a 10+ hour segment just for Seattle Day 1, 2, and 3. And to be fair, a lot of Ellie's stuff in Seattle is pure exploration and gameplay, but I still feel like they could have taken more time to make the mental spiral more prominent, and for Ellie to have a little bit more drive and momentum in wanting to find Abby, which we didn't get until the end of episode 5 and then this episode. And in hindsight, while I loved episode 1 and a lot of stuff that it does, I think that episode could have been trimmed down quite a bit to just the necessary story elements to save room for more stuff in Seattle. Either that or make the season longer, which really I would want the season to be longer rather than trim down episode 1. A longer season I think would have fixed a lot of the pacing issues that this season did have. And part of that pacing is that we spend basically 4 episodes out of the 7 in Jackson. Which, to be fair, one of those episodes was the flashback stuff with Joel, and that was perfect. I loved it. I think it's easily the best episode of the show. It's one of my favorite episodes I've ever seen in any television show. But 3 full episodes in Jackson for a segment in the game that is at maximum 2 hours is a little strange, especially when the season as a whole was only 7 episodes. Despite my criticisms on the pacing and the length, this is still an amazing TV show. It obviously doesn't match up to the brilliance of The Last of Us Part 2, but saying it's not as good as literally probably my favorite thing ever isn't necessarily a bad thing, and the season had 2 standout, all-time incredible episodes with episode 2 and 6. One being this epic, grand, heart-wrenching, and intense hour of television, with episode 6 being a touching, intimate, and arguably even more heartbreaking episode. The season also features incredible acting and directing from everyone involved. Bella Ramsey, despite what the internet wants a lot of people to think, is absolutely incredible in this season. Pedro Pascal was obviously amazing. I think Isabella Merced as Dina was maybe the standout. Obviously, can't forget about Caitlin Dever as Abby, who is crushing it, and I think she's going to deliver a next level performance in season 3. The set design, cinematography, music, and production value as a whole is simply next level, and it complements the world of The Last of Us very beautifully. I don't think anyone could make me dislike or not love the show, despite it not being as insanely amazing as the game is. Though I will say, I think overall, while I like Part 2 even more than Part 1 as games, I think Season 1 was a bit better, mainly because while it was fast paced, I wouldn't say it rushed through a lot of stuff like Season 2 does with Seattle. It was also a complete story, but that isn't necessarily fair because the adaptation of Part 2 was always going to be more than one season and leave at some weird endpoint. And as always, the internet discourse surrounding The Last of Us is completely insufferable, and it makes me question humanity's collective intelligence because some of the takes I've heard are just bafflingly stupid or just straight up hateful. Review bombing is stupid, and it has clearly been happening with this show. I don't know what else to say about review bombing. It's just dumb. Stop doing it. There's a difference between being constructively critical about the show and wanting it to be better and what a lot of people have to say on the internet. Certain people were always going to hate this show simply because it adapts a supposedly controversial game that, won every Game of the Year award. Saying something like, oh, I don't think Bella Ramsey nailed this element of Ellie is fine, but some of the genuinely, harassment I've seen is just disgusting. Stop doing that. Come on, it's not hard to not do that. Just don't do it. Anyway, it's a great show based off of an even better game, and I can't wait to see where they go with Season 3. After all, it is the only Last of Us content we're going to get for probably another 5 years, because I don't think they're going to announce a part 3 anytime soon when they have Intergalactic cooking, and once Intergalactic's out, it's still probably going to be a while until they announce it, let alone a part 3 is released. Naughty Dog, please, I need part 3. Thank you all for watching my coverage of The Last of Us Season 2. I'm obviously excited to see where it goes and to witness some of the best moments of that section of the game brought to life. A bunch of those moments are also teased within the finale. I liked seeing those little moments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, feel free to check out my Letterboxd, and stay tuned for any potential upcoming videos I have. I can't guarantee I'll upload as much as I have been since Season 2 started, but I have some ideas cooking up. You can definitely look forward to reviews of some big prominent upcoming movies. Endure and survive.
If it is to be said, so it is.